Are you a high potential employee? Do you know some high potential employees? I think we have employees in the workplace that are often overlooked, and we typically focus our attention on the few. When there's many, right? We hire people based on their skills and their talents, their ability to contribute to our organizations, but sometimes we don't even develop that full workforce. And so that's what I want to talk about today. So why am I hiring you and I'm not pouring into you what it's going to take for you to be valuable and increase your capacity and for you to be a long-term employee? I don't get it, but hopefully today we can uncover some of those reasons, but most importantly, we can give you solutions. So if you are a leader or an HR manager in your organization and you have responsibilities for managing, delivering performance feedback, or hiring and terminating employees, today's show is for you. But if you're an employee on the other end of that, it's for you too. So, because we've all encountered standout individuals in the workplace, right? When I was in public accounting, we used to call them the golden child of, when we saw someone, they were just so highly favored in the organization because there was just something about them that seemed a little bit different than the rest of us, right? And they're the ones who not only excel in their current roles, but also possess this potential to drive significant impact and innovation as future leaders. But identifying these high potentials is not always the first step. The real challenge and opportunity lies in our effectively being able to develop their skills and seeing and ensuring that they're engaged and committed to growing within the company. So how do we recognize high potential employees among us? It's not just about performance metrics. It's also about spotting their unique traits and behaviors that signal their capacity for leadership and growth. And are we training them? I think that's the thing. Oftentimes we find that people who get promoted, they get promoted for doing something well, but not necessarily for being a great people leader. So today, I want to discuss the tools and techniques of identifying the types of talents and skills, and maybe even building those talents and skills, and how to create an environment that fosters and nurtures the development of high potentials. But development is not all we need, right? It's only half of the equation. Retention is where the long-term success is. And that's where it lies, right? Where we'll explore proven strategies to retain these individuals and these valuable team members, from crafting compelling career pathways to fostering a culture that resonates with these aspirations and values. Now, of course, no journey is without its hurdles, right? People leave your organizations. People will be terminated. Things happen. There might be some shiny, bright object outside of your organizations that grabs their attention. But we'll tackle some of the common challenges as well in nurturing and retaining high potentials and high potential employees, including managing expectations and ensuring that our efforts with the broader organization and goals are aligned. Because one of the things that I find is sometimes people don't necessarily leave the work, they leave their leader, right? Their manager, their boss, whatever term you want to use. That's typically what people leave. They come to you because they're invested and they're committed to doing the work with you, but it might be something else that's causing them to leave. So let's jump into this. When you think about your own career and your own desire to excel at work, maybe it's not that you want to be in the C-suite, right? You might not want to be a chief operating officer or a CFO, chief financial officer, or even the chief HR officer. You may not want to be part of that leadership. Maybe you want to be a frontline manager or a supervisor. Like when you think about what that means, what comes to mind for you first? Is it, oh, I want to do this and they're going to train me? Or is it, I can't wait to be trained to be a great people leader? I think about those things. I don't think anybody thinks that in their organizations. They're not thinking, oh, when I get promoted or before I get promoted, my organization is going to spend time developing us to be great people leaders. That's not what they do, unfortunately. But how do we identify these people? Oftentimes, I was talking to someone the other day, and it was a prospective client, and they were sharing how they recognize that in their organization, most of the people who are in middle management, so that's a combination of frontline leaders, senior leaders, supervisors, and middle managers, right? They're not the more executive and senior and chief leaders, that most of them got those promotions right? They were promoted from within, and they were also promoted because they did something well, right? Something about their job they did well. So then they were given this role as a people leader. And, I shared with the CEO that I was talking with that he's not alone. A lot of our organizations have grown that way. But we're in a place now that we need a more sophisticated leader that is over people leaders in the organizations, because I think employees are a little bit more sophisticated. They're demanding a lot more from their employers related to both their development, their well-being. They have expectations of how leaders should engage with them. And so the requirements are so much higher than they used to be. So let's talk about, how do we identify first these high potentials? One, we always want to look at performance data, right? Are they consistently high performers, or are they exceeding expectations? So that takes into account that we've already told them what the expectations are, and they're coming in over and above. So they're consistently high performers. They have their rapid skill development, right? So they're quick learners. They acquire new skills and they adapt to changing environments faster than their peers. So that's one of the things that separates them from their peers. And they show strong leadership potential. So they can assess whether employees are demonstrating leadership qualities such as initiative, strategic thinking, and the ability to influence others positively. I want to just share a little story in my list. I was over at Georgia State University. My nephew is a organizational president for one of the student organizations in Robinson College of Business. And I just had a proud auntie moment. He was just so energetic in the room and opening the room, and just so charismatic, which I think makes a great leader. But what really impacted me the most was his peers were coming up to me, telling me and sharing how he has challenged them to be better, how his influence over them has been so positive that it's gotten them to be more focused on their education and more focused on finding internships, career development, and identifying mentors. And that is a strong leadership trait, right? So when we think about leaders in our organization, they should be influencing the staff and teams to want to be better, to not be better for themselves, right? So be better people in general, right? How we think, building better skills, but also to be able to contribute at a higher level. And so it's so great to see my nephew demonstrate that. And I thought about, that is such a strong leadership skill that sometimes is not rewarded in the way that it should be. So what are some other elements of identifying high potentials? Like, what are these other characteristics? I think there's some psychological things, of course. Our show is rooted in psychological safety. So I think having a high level of emotional intelligence or EQ around understanding people, helping to identify their skills, and just having some really strong personality traits. I think people who are great people leaders can potentially be great people leaders, are ambitious, they're resilient, they're adaptable. Again, they have strong and high levels of emotional intelligence. They are able to, one, recognize their own weaknesses and fill those weaknesses with the strengths of others on their team. They also have strong cognitive abilities, right? Problem solving skills, creativity, critical thinking. They also may be a lot more innovative, right? And I tell people this all the time. Those cognitive abilities can also be developed, and you become a student of your profession. And I think people who study their profession, their industry, the future of their profession, what it's doing, and take the role of kind of being the problem solver in their solution, make great people leaders, and they demonstrate high potential. Also, observation and feedback, being able to be proactive in engaging with others in the workplace, right? So they engage with their work, they engage with their colleagues, their clients around projects. They look for individuals who demonstrate enthusiasm, and they're a little bit more proactive. They have learning agility, and I think even change, right? They adapt to change very quickly. So they don't get too rooted in, well, we were going down this road, let's get there before we determine if we should move on. They're quick to pivot. They can see further in the future and say, you know what, this is not going the right way. It's not looking good. So, you know what? No shame, no foul. We're going to go in a different direction. I think high potentials are collaborative and they make good team workers, right? They serve on teams. They can be behind the scenes. They can give 100% to any leader. They can work under any condition. I think one of the things that I really valued about myself, I think growing up in such a diverse environment as I did with a lot of different cultures and people, one of the things that I always felt like I could thrive under anybody's leadership. And I'll say that with a grain of salt. I have been able to do that. There have been leaders that I did not want to work for. There have been leaders that honestly I did not like. But I think for me to be able to demonstrate my abilities, I could do it under anyone. Now, did they want me there? That's a completely different story. And so I think if we high potential people have an ability to deliver under any circumstance, even with a significant amount of resistance and even when they don't want to. And so I think that's where that learning agility, the being able to collaborate, to be able to serve on a team is really important. And, being able to do that and be a high potential, a lot of times what we need is like some clear criteria and benchmarks for identifying these high potential employees based on their performance, their potential, and specific organizational needs. Right. So if we can create a framework around performance, potential, and specific organizational needs, I think we can develop a lot more people in our organization. And I think we should have a waiting list and a pipeline of people who want to be in leadership. Oftentimes, people stray away from wanting to be in leadership because they're ill equipped. They don't want to deal with the stress of managing people. And I think it's just because we haven't trained people how to be led or how to lead. And so, in order to do that, we have to create psychologically safe spaces for people. And again, psychological safety is about being able to thrive in a workplace where you can make mistakes, you can have errors, you can have discourse, but there's a framework around set up so that people can still be successful. Leaders can get direct, open, and honest communication from their teams about what they like and what they don't like. And those leaders can sit back and say, I'm not going to take it personally, and we're going to address it, and this is how we're going to move forward. So when we think about strategies for talent development, just remember, we're going to focus on personalizing development plans. I know it's hard. You got 16,000 employees, or maybe you only got 185 employees. But there's some sort of way that as leaders, we should be able to personalize some of these development plans for people so that they can grow where they need to grow. Sometimes the challenge with a broad brush is that some people they're never reached, and we're talking above their heads, or it's boring, or we don't hit them where they need. So then they disconnect, right? So if I'm talking to people about how to communicate better, but I'm a strong writer, I'm a strong verbal communicator, then I kind of tune out and I'm not listening. So I think creating individualized plans that align with both the employee's career aspiration and the organization's goals is one thing to do that can help them, one, be more committed to development, right? These plans should identify specific skills and competencies to develop, set clear milestones, and provide roadmaps for achieving these goals, right? So they should be actionable. We talk about that in one of our earlier episodes when we talk about giving and receiving feedback, right? These plans should be like clear action steps on what to do. There should be no ambiguity. It should be clear, it should be concise, it should be actionable. We should have programs designed for development, and they could be called mentorship or sponsorship programs, but they should specifically be designed for people to grow. And people who are serving as the mentor or the sponsor should be really clear about how to pair high potential employees with experienced, successful leaders within your organization. The relationship should be able to provide insights, guidance, and support as they navigate their career, right? So not just correction, like give me insights about, what is the direction that the company is going. And I think these programs, these growth programs, should not be about me trying to create a mini me in the organization. Right? I think this is where equity kind of comes into the equation when we talk about psychological safety and we talk about inclusion. programs and belonging and accessibility, right? The equity part of this is that we meet people where they are. I think when you think about some of the interviews, if you followed the NCAA Women's Championship and you listened to Coach Dawn and she talked about her players, and she's from one generation, they're from a different generation. How she was coached is a little bit different than how she's coaching this generation. She's not trying to put those young women in a box. What she said that I thought was so profound is that I realized I had to meet them where they are. So if that means playing their music, if they like certain kind of music, I'm going to play it. If it means I get out there and I dance with them, if it means I have to be tough and stay on them to make sure that they deliver, if I have to give them accountability and there's repercussions for their actions or non-actions, I do it. But I do it from a place of where they are, not where I am and trying to get them there fast, right? And so I think even as people leaders, when we're working with high potentials, we have to meet them where they are. And we have to give them insights and we have to give them guidance. And I think one of my favorite definitions of leadership is a leader takes people by the hand and leads them to where they need to go, right? And that's, I think, the kind of leadership that's really important when we develop these growth programs. Then leadership training. Y'all, please stop promoting people without training them on how to lead, giving them real skills and frameworks on how to lead people. We are so focused on creating diversity, right? And I love diversity, diversity of thought, diversity of gender, race, all the different identities, all 30 something different ways that people can identify. I believe in it. I champion it. I think it's an important part of us being innovative, creative, and profitable. But what I don't believe in is promoting people to leadership roles before they're ready and to promote people into leadership roles without a readiness program, right? So they work hand in hand. We don't prematurely do it, and we don't do it without taking people through a rigorous developmental program to teach them how to lead. I promise you, if you create leaders before they get the title, they are more impactful and it will directly impact your turnover in your organization. Less people will leave. The morale will be higher because everyone's getting this sort of very specific skill development through workshops, through seminars, courses. We can have effective communication, strategic thinking, team management, how to manage conflict, all the things. And I believe high performing teams are made through constant, continuous, reinforced training. And that happens while people are in those leadership roles and before they get there. And I know you're thinking, but that costs a lot. I'm going to tell you, it's not the technical aptitude of your employees that causes your projects to fail. It's leadership. It's the lack of the skills to lead others, to galvanize people, to get excited about the work, to manage capacity, and even just to show areas of caring. To care for your employees' well-being, what's happening in their personal life I think is a strength, a sign of strength in being a great leader. So you might be thinking, she's all mushy. I am a little mushy, but I do think you can be fair. And what happens is when you hold people accountable, but you also pour into them the skills they need to be successful, they will trust you. And so the trust meter goes up. And that's really what makes for a great team, is being able to create strong alliances of trust. Because even if someone comes to me and they give me news that I don't want to hear and it's uncomfortable and the feedback makes me feel bad in the moment, I can always say, you know what? She's being fair and I know she cares about me. She cares about my well-being. She's not going to gaslight me. She's not going to undermine me. She's not going to hold this against me. And so 6 months from now or 12 months from now, when it's time for my performance review, I don't feel blindsided by the feedback. So what are some of our key drivers for retention? Do y'all know? What in your organization? Have you measured your organization? Are you looking around? Do your teams even talk about what drives retention for us? And I know you don't, because who's having these conversations if I'm not in the room with you? Like, nobody's talking about this stuff. So even after you debrief, I think go through performance reviews. And I think it'd be great for leaders to have a conversation with their teams and say, we just finished our performance reviews, really proud of what you all accomplished this year. Let's talk a little bit about retention. What is it going to take for you to stay here? How much longer can I keep you? Right? What is it? And even if you move off my team and get a promotion to another, bro, what are those things that make people stay here at this company? And then also those leaders who have that conversation with their teams, that they come together as leaders and share, hey, these are some of our differentiating factors of why people stay. And let's create, something. We have our core values, but what about a retention statement? What about sharing this is what it takes to keep people in the organization? So teams that have a lot of turnover can evaluate themselves, right? We could do a whole assessment, create an assessment related to retention. These are the things. Let's go ahead and evaluate the rest of our teams and see, are they delivering on some of these retention strategies? And so a couple of things I think are important to drive retention. And the first one is meaningful work. And sometimes that meaningful work gives people a sense of purpose. And so often one of the frameworks that we have is we talk about, how do we acknowledge people? And one of the things that's on that list is this meaningful work, having a sense of purpose and why I'm doing what I do and the what of what I do. So both the why and the what. Now, granted, your purpose might not be to manage rows and rows of data in an Excel spreadsheet and do pivot tables and VLOOKUPs and all of these things. But the purpose of the work, right? The why you're there, the purpose at the company, who they serve and how they serve their clients and their customers could be provided to that. So providing high potential employees with work that not only challenges them, but also contributes to the organization's mission and their personal sense of purpose is a key way to align and ensure that employees see value in their work, and it's impactful and it fosters a deeper engagement and commitment to the company. The second key driver for retention, I believe, is career progression and opportunities. People need to see beyond the horizon. They need to say, I see a career path here, right? That the organization is not so flat that I won't be able to do new, exciting, and different things. And so high potential employees often have a strong desire for growth, advancement, and development and achievement, right? So that fuels them. Those are their motivation. And so by offering some sort of clear and achievable career path with developmental opportunities, signals to these employees that there's a future for them within the organization, which can greatly increase their loyalty and their retention. So, tell me that there's something out here for me. And guess what? I'll stay. I'll stay the course. And then the other part of this is recognition. So we would do a framework on the three things. It would just be three for the sake of today's cause, right? It's like this recognition piece. So being able to timely and meaningfully recognize high potential employees' efforts and achievements is so critical, right? Some of us don't need a pat on the back, but a lot of us do. We want to be acknowledged, maybe not publicly, but privately. And maybe we like a little private acknowledgement, but we also want you to tell other people how awesome we are. And so I think that's important too. And understanding what's important to that employee. Maybe that acknowledgement and recognition comes in a short award, a short-term award or a bonus, right? So they get so many dollars to use in some award program that you might have internally. Maybe for some, it's like, hey, take the rest of the day off, or some additional PTO time, or it could be a variety of different things. I think even as a team, coming up with, how do we recognize people? Maybe for some people, just putting their photo in the company intranet newsletter is something, because they like public recognition. They want people to see and hear about what they've done. And so I think there's all of these ways that we can validate the contributions of high potential employees that reinforces their importance to the organization and their importance to the team. I hope y'all like those. I hope you're taking notes because I'm giving a lot of really good information here that you can use. Like, people pay us a lot of money to put these frameworks together for them. And so I'm sharing this to you all for free here on our podcast that you can find on Spotify and other places that you listen to podcasts. So this will be airing in the next couple of weeks on those shows, or you might be listening to it now. So let's get back to our topic here again. So some of these key drivers, again, for retention is meaningful work, having a clear path of career progression and knowing what those opportunities are, and then recognition. So how do we craft a compelling value proposition and supportive work environment for our teams? You just got to craft it. You got to tell people that there is value for them to be there. And we tailor that for high potential employees, how they can go beyond the standard compensation packages that can include elements and address specific desires, such as needs that they have around doing more impactful work, professional development, leadership roles, compensation, bonuses, equity. All of these things can be really, really important for them, right? Fostering a supportive work environment. I do think we need to get back to this engagement around using the word our work family. I think we've gotten so transactional in the workplace. And I see it with clients. I see it with why people are leaving the workplace, why morale is low. We are so transactional. We've completely left out the relational part of the work. And what it does is it makes us see people as what they do and not as humans. Right? We are, the conflict in the workplace is not issues based, it's personal. The evaluation of people, the feedback is more personal and comparative than it is productive and performance based. And so I think, creating this supportive work environment, I think really gets back to us saying, I like working with these people. I know them. I get to know them. I know what's happening in their worlds. Now, it might not be all the details of their lives. Of course, we need boundaries, but it's enough to us to always remember that Janine is, she's an important part of her own family. She has a life outside of this work. She's not just the accounts receivable clerk. She's not just the HR manager. She's that and this, right? So also creating some innovation and autonomy. I think people need to make sure that they do have autonomy. As leaders, we need to trust people to be able to do the work, but we also have to be clear about how we communicate and what our expectations are. What do we want the outcomes of the work they're going to do to demonstrate or deliver? And then take our hands off the wheels and give people the autonomy they need to do the work and to do it well. Continuous learning, both on the skill that they are currently required to demonstrate and maybe even new skills. One of the things that I love to do is put my people through training. I just randomly find something like, hey, I want you to take this webinar, right? So make some time in the next 2 weeks or by the end of the month. Let's figure it out. And you let me know. I want you to take this workshop. And it could be about something that I want them to do in the future, a new technology, something related to AI, something to make our work more faster and easier for them, not to displace them or remove them out the workplace, but so that they can do things faster and lend their attentions to other areas of our company. So that's how continuous learning can be used. And then let's find ways to encourage people to be loyal and have a long-term commitment to the company. And that's not manipulation, but we want to build work environments that support not just the professional, but also the personal well-being of the employee and that can foster loyalty with them, right? People want to come to places that they like to work with people that they like. And I'm going to even say people that they love, right? So they have this sense of achievement, they get acknowledged, they have a sense of purpose, and then they feel a sense of belonging. And belonging is not about fitting in. It's about who you are matters, and we're so glad that you're here. It's not about, I got to adapt and code switch and cover so that I fit into this environment, because that does not inspire commitment at all. If I have to pretend like I am a 45-year-old white male, I'm never going to achieve that, because I am all of this Black woman with all of the culture that I bring to the workplace and my point of view and my lived experiences to the work. And what's important is that I belong here, right? That who I am, how I talk, and the things that I enjoy and love matter to this organization, and it makes it a richer culture. I've shared quite a bit today, about developing and retaining high potential employees. And I hope that you've caught on to the fact that I'm talking about high potentials, not just high performers, right? There are people in your organization that you are completely overlooking because they're not shining as bright, or maybe you have some bias, performance bias, or affinity bias towards someone else, and you're missing out on an opportunity to develop a high potential employee. And what we're doing is keeping them at the meet expectation level when there's so much more that we could be pouring into them to foster for them. So I want to leave you with a few more things just before we wrap up. And these are just some practical solutions and preventative strategies because, I can get really aspirational with you, and because I'm so excited about this, the opportunity for us to create psychologically safe spaces in companies across the world, but even in my own backyard here in the US, that I know I'm like, oh, do this, do this, do that. And if you do that, you will win. But I know practically that there's going to be some resistance to these sorts of conversations in the workplace, especially when we start talking about having a work family and using language like love at work, right? And I think it's important. I found it comforting to say, oh, I love working with these people. Or even if I said, you know what, this person gets on my nerves, but there's nobody else I'd rather work with, right? You're going to run into some issues, right? And so when that does happen, I think it's really important why we want to manage and use data, right? So let's find, because there's some limited resources, how can we leverage technology and partnerships and data to make sure that we're on the right path when we're working with high potential employees, right? Do we see them moving into the leadership pipeline? Are we finding that complaints are going down, right? The number of complaints that they have, the number of complaints that others have about working with them are decreasing, right? Does the HR manager for your particular department or team, are they tracking this sort of data, right? Are we focusing on high impact activities, right? So when we think about the work that people do in organizations, it's either tactical, operational, or strategic. Like, are these high impact activities that your teams are spending a lot of time doing? Like, are we prioritizing the development of these activities so that we can root employees in understanding that, yes, there's going to be some tactical work, but you also get an opportunity to focus on operational and strategic activities. And then let's communicate the benefits and communicate them clearly to everyone. Let's involve all employees in the planning. Everybody should have a say. This should not be done in silos. And yes, this is going to take a lot of work, but I promise you, if you make the investment in both time and resources, even if it means the resources bringing in a consultant to help you with this, I promise you the benefits on the back end are going to be higher than you ever expected. So as you go down this journey, I just want you to remember that high potential employees are in your organization. You need to identify who they are, and you need to make an investment in their development and teach them how to be better people leaders. Do not get distracted only by that small percentage of high performers and put so much weight on them that they get burned out. And that's the biggest challenge, that high performers, those folks that are naturally out there killing the game, they get burned out so quickly because as leaders, we are constantly relying upon them to carry the weight of others who we have not developed. Don't forget those people. Again, we have resources for you. I want you to take advantage of these free resources. They are a lot of the frameworks that we use when working with our clients. I think they'll give you some good things to think about as a leader. You can share them with your team. If you want to work with Everyday Lead and our team, you can also use that same website to schedule a call with me and a consultation. And I'm happy to answer any of your questions to support you in any way that we can. Thank you again so much for joining us here on the Untoxic Boss, and I look forward to seeing you. We will be back again next week with another episode and probably pretty amazing special guests. So thanks again for joining us, and thank you for your commitment to creating psychologically safe spaces in your workplace, a place where all can thrive. We want to introduce you a resource that we know that will impact your life and your career. It's a book, Unstuck and Unstoppable. It is the ultimate guide to overcoming obstacles and achieving your goals. With practical tips and inspiring stories, the book will help you leverage your value, increase your visibility, and gain recognition to accelerate your career. Take action towards getting the career that you deserve. This book was named Best Career Book of 2022. Get your copy anywhere you buy books, either on Amazon or at our website at unstuckandunstoppablebook.com. Thank you for joining the Untoxic Boss podcast today. We are here and on a mission to help people stop being a jerk at work. We'll see you here again next week.